All right, so what we have here is the homework that I assigned on Thursday night for you guys to complete. It's a really good review of linear equations and all the stuff that I'm expecting you to know. Tomorrow, Friday, we're going to be doing a group activity, and then on Monday or Tuesday, we're going to be having our quiz. So you want to be understanding some of this stuff, and if you have trouble, please come and see me either at lunch or before school or after school if we make arrangements. So this first problems 1 through 6 are asking you to graph. If we have it in y equals mx plus b form, then we can identify our slope and our y-intercept. Alright, so in this case, we would begin at our y-intercept of -2. We want to label our axes so we know where we're talking. So our y-axis, we go to -2. From that point, we're going to rise 6 and run 5. And our line would go through that. I would want to use a straight edge. Okay. And put arrows on the ends because it continues in both directions. All right. So most of these are pretty self-explanatory. Once you get here, you need to be careful that you are solving for y first. So getting this 9x to the other side, by doing the same thing to both sides, we can take 9x away from both sides. And we need to remember that that 5 and that 9x are different kinds of terms. So when we subtract 9x from both sides, 5 and 9x can't be combined. So we just leave it as -9x plus 5. Let's see. This one is always a little bit confusing to students. -y, there are a couple strategies. I've seen some students take that, add y to both sides to get the y to a positive. I've also seen students multiply both sides by a -1. So do the same thing to both sides, multiply by -1 or divide by -1. Just be careful that you're using distributive property and that -1 gets distributed to both pieces. Okay. Here, if this looks different than, so we have y equals divide both sides by 2, y equals -1. Sometimes it's like, oh, I forgot how to graph that. Well, no matter what the x is, the y is always going to be -1. So I could just plot a couple points and say, well, if x was -4, if x was 0, if x was 5, I just randomly chose those x's. No matter what x is, y is always going to be -5. So you can go to -4, -1, 0, -1, 5, -1. So this is the line y equals -1. Alright, I think the next page is answers. Hold on. Oh, yep, okay. So, and remember I said in class that we are writing things in slope-intercept form, so the directions really are, let's write the slope-intercept form of the equation given the slope and the y-intercept. So, slope-intercept form. So, in this case, not too hard. You got your m. We know what m equals, and we know what b equals. So we can put that into y equals mx plus b. 9 and 10 are already done since I've changed the directions, right? Because we're going to put it into slope-intercept form. Here you need to be careful. Make sure you're doing PEMDAS, distribute, and do that multiplication before you do anything with this addition or subtraction. Alright. So this right here says the opposite of x plus 3. So in a sense, that also says -1 times x plus 3. So you need to do that distributive property and get that -1 multiplied into each of those. Alright, let's see. Down here. Oh, there we go. Okay, write the standard form of the equation. So this is what we've been practicing lately. We know our m. We know an x value, and we know a y value. And I've been focusing on, don't see that as a point, as only one piece of information. It really is giving you two pieces of information. We know an x value and a y value, an input and an output. So if x is 4 and y is -2 and m is -1, if I know three pieces of the puzzle, and I have one remaining thing to find, I can find it. So in y equals mx plus b, if I know my m, and I know my x, and I know my y, I plug all those values in and see what I get. So we start with our y, -2 equals our slope times our x. Right, so I got my slope, I got my x, plus b. Y equals mx plus b. Multiply this out, and I'm going to add 4 to both sides. If I add 4, I get +2. So b equals +2. But that's not my final answer. That's just part of the puzzle. So it says, write in slope-intercept form. I'm just going to write SI. Slope-intercept form, the equation. So y equals, I know my m, I know my b. So my final answer would be y equals negative x plus 2. All right. And also I had some really creative ideas, and it's great. Some students just plotted that point. Like if you graph this, plot that point, -2, 4, and then find your slope. Well, negative down 1, right 7. You can find your y-intercept sometimes. Sometimes it's not so clear. In this case, it's going to be something really interesting. You have to deal with some fractions here. So this one would not be one that would be good to do graphically, but would be much more accurate if we did it algebraically. Okay? All right. So again, here we have 2 points. Now we have to find the slope first, right? So we have that equation y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Find the slope first, then choose either of these points to use when you identify your x equals, y equals, and m equals. Then you can find your b and write the equation line. We talked a lot in class about parallel lines are going to have the same slope, so we know the slope, and perpendicular lines are going to have the opposite reciprocal slope. Hold on one sec. Okay, so our opposite reciprocals so what that means is if it's negative, it's going to become positive. So now our slope of the line perpendicular to this line is going to be the opposite. If it's negative, my perpendicular slope is positive. And 2/7, the reciprocal of 2/7 is 7/2. So my slope is 7/2. I know my x, I know my y. I can plug these 3 values in and find the equation of my line by identifying what b is. Okay? So that is the general gist. Ooh, this one's tricky. How about this? If I have a -1 as my slope, what would the opposite reciprocal be of that? Opposite, negative, positive? What's the reciprocal of 1 over 1? Oh, I guess that's a lot easier than I had anticipated. Alright, so it's +1, right? So if we have a slope of -1, a slope of +1 is going to be perpendicular. Alright? Great. So hopefully that helped you a little bit get through the homework and review a little bit for the group activity and the quiz. Alright, come see me if you need help. I'm here for you. Okay, thanks for watching.